What if I told you that history's greatest military genius wasn't just a conqueror, but a mastermind who rewrote the rules of war, and that for nearly 2 decades no force on earth could stop him? Napoleon Bonaparte didn't just win battles. He shattered empires, humiliated kings, and made Europe tremble at his name. And yet the world remembers his fall more than his unstoppable rise. But here's what most people don't know. Napoleon wasn't just lucky or skilled. He was playing a completely different game than everyone else. His enemies never stood a chance. Stay with me as we uncover the hidden reality behind why Napoleon was practically undefeated, and why, when he finally fell, it wasn't because he was outmatched, but because he made one fatal mistake. Napoleon Bonaparte is often ranked among history's greatest military minds, spoken in the same breath as Alexander the Great, Genghis Khan, and Julius Caesar. But what set him apart was how he transformed war itself. He turned ragtag soldiers into elite forces, manipulated politics like a chessboard, and crushed armies that were often larger and better equipped. Yet despite being outnumbered again and again, no one could defeat him for years. What made him so dangerous? And why did his enemies keep losing? In this video, we'll dive into the strategies, mind games, and sheer genius that made Napoleon the greatest of all time, and why in the end he lost everything. Napoleon's story wasn't supposed to happen. Born on the remote island of Corsica, he wasn't even fully accepted as French. But in just a few years, he rose from a mere artillery officer to the ruler of France. How? By seizing every opportunity and by thinking faster than his enemies. 1793, the Siege of Toulon. At just 24, Napoleon saw what no one else did. While French generals hesitated, he used innovative artillery tactics to crush the British. This single victory put him on the map. 1796, the Italian campaign. France's generals expected a slow, drawn-out war. Napoleon ignored their orders, moved lightning fast, and obliterated Austrian and Italian forces. His secret? Speed, deception, and ruthlessness. His enemies were still fighting like it was the 18th century. He was fighting like it was the future. Napoleon didn't just win battles, he rewrote how wars were fought. Here's how he did it. The core system. Unlike other armies that moved slowly in one giant mass, Napoleon broke his army into independent corps, each capable of fighting alone, but devastating when combined. Speed and shock. He marched his troops twice as fast as other armies, striking before they could react. Divide and conquer. Instead of fighting all his enemies at once, he split them up and destroyed them one by one. A perfect example, the Battle of Austerlitz, 1805. Russia and Austria had a massive advantage in numbers. Napoleon? He played mind games. He pretended to be weak, luring them into a trap. When they took the bait, he crushed them so completely that the world realized no one could outthink Napoleon. Napoleon wasn't just a warlord, he was a master of perception. He controlled the story. Napoleon flooded France with propaganda, making sure every victory, real or exaggerated, was burned into people's minds. He won loyalty like no other. Unlike kings who stayed in palaces, he fought beside his men, remembered their names, and shared their hardships. Soldiers didn't just fight for France, they fought for him. He weaponized fear. His enemies weren't just defeated, they were psychologically shattered. Even when he lost battles, he spun the narrative to make it seem like a temporary setback until his final days. For years, Napoleon was invincible. His enemies formed coalition after coalition, and he kept tearing them apart. So what changed? The invasion of Russia in 1812. Napoleon had conquered almost all of Europe, but Russia refused to submit. Thinking he could force a quick surrender, he marched in with 600,000 men, but he underestimated the Russian winter. Instead of facing Napoleon head-on, the Russians used scorched earth tactics, burning everything so his army had no supplies. By the time winter hit, Napoleon's Grand Army was starving, freezing, and dying by the thousands. By the time he retreated, over 500,000 of his men were dead. It was the beginning of the end. His enemies saw their chance. In 1813, at the Battle of Leipzig, the combined forces of Europe finally overpowered him. 2 years later, at Waterloo in 1815, Napoleon, once the master of Europe, was defeated for the last time. But here's the twist. Even in exile, his legacy was more powerful than his enemies could have imagined. The man who changed the world. Napoleon Bonaparte wasn't just a conqueror. He reshaped warfare, redefined leadership, and created legal systems, like the Napoleonic Code, that still influence modern law. But in the end, his greatest strength, his ambition, was also his downfall. Now here's the real question. Was Napoleon truly the greatest military mind of all time, or was he just another empire builder doomed to fall? Let me know in the comments. And if you want to uncover more hidden truths from history, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because trust me, the past is filled with stories just waiting to be uncovered. See you in the next video.